Hi guys, welcome everyone. My name is Madhav G. Padathil, here for Sports Neuroscience. Today we are going to be looking at rate coding based on a research article which is rate coding and the control of muscle force. Okay. So first we are going to be looking at what is muscle force generation. So we have to see for that what causes a muscle force. Here we see a muscle. First part is motor unit recruitment. For a muscle force to be generated for you to contract or eccentrically or concentrically contract or do any kind of action, this muscle force should be there. First part is motor unit. So what is a motor unit? That is basically a nerve, and the muscle tissue that the nerve is connecting together is called as motor unit. So motor unit recruitment is basically the number of motor units that are playing or being active for muscle to contract. Second part of that is basically rate coding. Rate coding, otherwise firing rate. How fast does a muscle fire, or how fast a pulse come? Okay. Now, at low forces where you're doing minor tasks or a muscle force is required to be very low, the recruitment is what is dominant. That means majorly for a small task to happen, more number of motor units are recruited. Not the rate coding is very slow, but at the same time motor unit recruitment is higher so that the required muscle force is produced. So here, even if 100 percentage of the motor unit recruitment is happening, let's take 100%, there with the minimal PPS, that is rate coding, PPS is 8 pulse per second. With approximate to 8 pulse per second, you only get 25% of the maximal output. Whereas there are chances to reach this 100% at around 35 pulse per second. So that means that the higher force production is basically rate coding dependent, and for lower forces, the body is saving energy by making more or recruiting more motor units, at the same time reducing the rate coding or reducing the firing rate. So rate coding in fast contraction. So in ballistic movements, equal rapid forces. Ballistic movement is basically rapid force generation, where you're doing a jumping activity, where you're doing fast movements. All those are known as rapid ballistic movements. So here, where there is rapid force development, you have to uh, do a lot of powerful movements. Here, there is 60 to 120 pulse per second of rate coding that is happening for that action to happen. So here, rate coding increases with then the recruitment. Rate coding is more than the recruitment in fast actions. So in such cases, there are studies which have said that only 40 percentage of the motor units are recruited at a high force level activity where the rate coding is very high. So that's one thing that you have to understand. The rate coding dominates the recruitment in faster actions. At the same time, there will be more synchronized motor unit recruitment. Only 40 percentage, but all that 40% will be synchronized, will be working together to do it. Not all the motor units are required, but very less amount of motor units in a synchronized way. Obviously, can we train them? Very easy question. Yes, we can train them by doing more ballistic movements, by doing more sprinting actions, by doing more power related actions. You can train them. You can make the body create more firing units, or you can increase the rate coding. So here, 60 to 120 pulse per second is a very broad range. You can make a body or a muscle that is only working at 60 pulse per second. Once with training, with incorporating faster movements and ballistic movements, what happens is it will slowly change to 100 or 120 pulse per second, which is something that we can do, and which all the athletes who has a power dominant sport require. With age, there are fewer doublets or reduces at discharge. What that means is when you are aging, two pulses going at the same time or consecutive pulses going at the same time reduces, and the discharge also reduces. The amount of pulse that are going reduces. The strength of the pulse also reduces. So with age, what happens is the rate coding kind of gets slower, but with training, it will get faster. Obviously, you can make your body produce more force and get yourself faster. Now, strengthening versus lengthening contractions. So we know that there is both concentric and eccentric contraction. Let's see how the motor unit recruitment and the rate coding differs during this. For shortening or concentric contraction requires high firing rates. There will be more motor unit recruitment, and lengthening or eccentric contractions uses lower firing rates for the same force. So what it means is, if you are lifting an object doing with a concentric action, yes, there will be higher firing rates. For example, bicep. If you are curling the bicep, it requires more firing rates. But at the same time, if you are going down the eccentric plane, what happens is the firing rate reduces for the same action or the same force. Okay, now let's see. Why do you think this happens? Generally, a lot when you're thinking about hypertrophic training and all those stuff, we say that okay, the person needs to do a lot of eccentric training. But here it's saying that there is less, force, less number of motor units or firing rate is only required to do a eccentric action. So muscles are naturally stronger eccentrically. So when you're doing an eccentric kind of action, not just the muscle, everything kind of works together. All the connective tissues, let it be the other connective tissues like tendon and other ligaments, all work together, make it stronger. And this has been found for a very long time, where eccentric actions or during eccentric state, the muscles are stronger compared to the concentric state. So there is a study on the tibialis anterior that was done, where the body was kept in such a way, or such an angle of 20 degree of foot, where for the eccentric and concentric action of the tibialis anterior require the same amount of torque and same amount of force. Here we saw that the firing rate was higher on the concentric action, and number of motor unit recruited was higher on the eccentric action. No, force steadiness and common input. We'll work on that also. So even steady forces has fluctuation. Even if you're doing a force or an activity, you're holding something and not moving, still that also has small fluctuations. So fluctuation can be caused by low frequency. What it means is that generally when you think about fluctuations, we might think about one motor unit having some kind of defaults, but generally it's not that. So the fluctuations happen when all the muscle motor units that are there has lower frequency fires in between. So for example, we have our fingers and there are 20 motor units that are present in the fingers. All the 20 motor units at an amount of time synchronized, there will be low frequency fires that happens. At that time there will be fluctuations that are happening. So if there is more variability in the frequency of the electricity or the discharge that is sent or action potential that is sent, there will be less steadiness for that muscle group. So with training, you basically improve that. You have a better control. There will be more steadiness and there will be less fluctuations that you can see. So if steadiness correlates with function, you talk about grip, walking, or pec test. So this grip dexterity, or if you want to try to take a coin, how you write, or talks about majorly the grip about how you handle cycling bar or a barbell. In all those places, this steadiness is required a lot. Even while walking, for your legs should be steady, or else it can create a lot of problems. So here, with training, you can improve the steadiness. With training, you can make sure the muscles are firing at a constant rate and at a constant frequency, so that it will get better also. Fatigue and firing rate decline. So we know that when you're doing a prolonged activity like an isometric movement or something, it reaches a point where your body won't be able to keep up with the force, which is known as fatigue. So if the body is not able to keep up with the force, the force output reduces. That means that the firing rate or the rate coding also reduces. Again, so this is majorly due to two stuffs. First one is late neural adaptation, and the second one is afferent feedback. So late neural adaptation is basically when the higher center has sent a signal, but the muscle or the later neurons or motor units are not able to receive that signal at the full strength, or are not able to push the movement, or do make sure that the movement is happening or the force is being produced. Afferent feedback is where when there is a higher inhibitory feedback or inhibitory feedback that is being sent back to the spinal cord, which reduces the firing rate. So number of motor units recruitment increases. As we see, if the firing rate reduces with fatigue, to keep up with the force that is there or the output there, what happens is the number of motor units recruitment increases. As we told before, even at 40% of motor unit recruited, a higher force, a very high amount of force can be generated with higher rate coding. So when the rate coding reduces, obviously there will be more number of motor units which are recruited. Next, holding versus pushing the same load. We call different fatigue rates. What it means is that if you are holding a weight where there is an inertia that is causing to the weight, or if you're trying to push the same load through the ground, what it means is that when there is holding a weight where there is more efferent feedback for that movement or holding while holding the weight than pushing an object, the body fatigues faster doing that motion with more uh, inertia in it. So rigid loads fatigue slower than inertial loads. So rigid loads as in pushing the same weight uh, through the plane where there is lesser inertia to it, there is slower fatigue that is happening. Now we'll see adaptations to the activity and inactivity. Majorly three of them we'll see. So strength training basically increases the rate coding. If you do strength training and you basically focus on more faster movements while doing strength training, it basically improves the rate coding. Second one is endurance training. When you're doing endurance training, it reduces because you are focusing on slower action, slower sustained action where there is more amount of fatigue also present. What happens? It reduces the rate coding, but at the same time it improves the motor unit recruitment. Third one is detraining, reducing firing and force in motor units. Basically, detraining can be inactivity, even immobilization. At that time, what happens is it reduces the firing, uh, basically rate coding, and also the force in the motor unit. The amount of motor unit also reduces with detraining or inactivity. So rate coding is highly adaptable. The more you work out, the more it gets better. The more you work on ballistic movements, the more rate coding gets better. At the same time, the more you stay idle, the rate coding reduces. The more you do slow movements, the rate coding also reduces. So I hope that you guys all understood this small session. Rate coding, which is something very important, which is not that seen, or firing rate, which is not that seen very highly, is also pretty important. And here we see that how much more than 75% of the maximal load or the maximum force that your body can create is because of the firing rate or the rate coding compared to the motor unit recruitment.